Thank you, thank you, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank the Scott County Democrats and the Iowa Democratic Party for putting this event together. And I want to specifically thank my wife, Jill. She gives me the strength I need every day to fight for what's right in this great country. Folks, it is so good to be back in Iowa. This beautiful place that represents real American values. This beautiful place that takes common sense approaches to complicated situations. My first memory of Iowa was my second time running for president in 2008. I debated my fellow Democrats in Des Moines to compete for your support in the caucus. It was at that debate that I didn't give the most resounding support for my future boss and our future president, which may explain why I came in almost dead last on caucus night. But it was at that August 19th debate that I got to really introduce myself to you and your fellow Iowans. You got to hear my stances on the failed Republican leadership of the prior 8 years. You got to hear me say in my own words how I felt about the direction of the country and how important it was that we take it back. And while sadly, I didn't get nominated as your presidential candidate, I will never forget the day that my friend Barack asked me to run for him with him as his vice president. I told him no. Like an idiot, I told him no. I said that I was worried that my status as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate was too important to give up, and that being vice president might throw that hard work away. But Barack convinced me otherwise. He told me that he needed my strong leadership on foreign policy, and that as someone with extensive experience as a legislator, I would provide the offsetting balance that he needed to be the most effective candidate possible. So on August 23rd, 2008, I accepted his offer. We went on together to win the nomination at the Democratic National Convention that same year. I gotta tell you folks, it wasn't easy for me during that campaign. John McCain had been one of my best friends in the Senate. We worked together on numerous pieces of legislation that ultimately benefited the country. We were good friends who sat together in the Senate dining room and on the Senate floor. But John and I had a different vision for America. John represented the status quo, and I was given the opportunity of hope and change that this nation so desperately needed. John McCain and I sparred many years after the election, but nevertheless, his character was unassailable until the day he died. And I pray to God that more people in Congress and in state houses across this country can look to our relationship as a prime example of what real bipartisanship looks like, what it means to be American. For we are stronger united than we are divided. John knew that. I still know that. God bless John McCain and for all his service to this country. But I knew that in 2008, we needed to get this country back on track, and Barack and I had our work cut out for us on the campaign trail. The Iraq War wasn't winding down like had been promised to us, and the economy was collapsing. With our message of hope and change, we were honored to be elected president and vice president on November 4th, 2008. From that day forward, we had a promise to keep to the American people. One that included a vision for the future for all, not just the top 1%. One that gave people back their dignity by putting them back to work. One that brought our troops home from a reckless and unconscionable war. As your vice president, I worked tirelessly to rebuild the economy after the financial crash of 2008. The president asked me to oversee spending from his stimulus package that gave funds to millions of businesses and programs to put people back to work. Under my supervision, we didn't waste a single penny of that stimulus money. Billions of dollars were spent on hardworking Americans. And you know what? It worked. The American economy came back from the brink of disaster, and we experienced continued job growth for the remainder of our leadership tenure. The president looked to me on numerous occasions for leadership on foreign policy decisions. Most notably, that night of May 2nd, 2011, when we were all huddled in the Situation Room, watching our courageous men in uniform bring Osama bin Laden to justice. All we could do was sit and watch as we waited for a mission accomplished. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in that room. But we got him. And we delivered justice to millions of Americans that felt the heartbreak of 9/11. Justice brought to the thousands of men and women in uniform who fought and died in service to their country during the wars to follow 9/11. We tackled that problem, and then came the debt ceiling crisis. Oh my God. These Republicans in Congress, let me tell you, they were unrelenting on the president about what they thought should be done about the government. The Republicans in the House were willing to hold the government hostage over Obamacare. Yes, Obamacare, the prized piece of legislation that gave millions of Americans access to affordable health care. Can you believe this? Even after all this time, I still can't believe that they were willing to do that. They were willing to hold you and your healthcare hostage for what? So they could go back to their donors like lapdogs and beg for a treat saying that they did a good job? Come on. That was just ridiculous what they wanted to do. And I tell you what, if I had not had the relationship that I had with Mitch McConnell and the other Senate Republicans, they would still be having this fight today. My efforts to reach across the aisle and find a solution to this crisis was important to me because it wasn't about making sure the government could stay open. It was about making sure that Americans had the basic services that they needed to survive. And folks, I'm glad to tell you today that we got it done. We worked together to keep the government open for you and for your parents and for your children. I think it was that level of bipartisanship that led us to victory again in 2012. 2012 was a big year for the country. The president and I worked so hard to rebuild this country from a collapsing economy and bring our men and women home from the war in Afghanistan. We didn't need to prove that the country was headed in the right direction. We had to prove that the country for the first time was on the right path. A path towards prosperity for you and yours and theirs. 2012 was the first time I publicly expressed my support for same-sex marriage. To be honest, I'm not sure what took me so long. It is here in Iowa that you guys took the progressive stance, long before anyone else, to legalize same-sex marriage. I should have followed the Iowa model and caught up to speed with you guys. 2012 saw us staring down the barrel of a potentially dangerous Republican administration. I and the president did everything in our power to stop it. With your support, Iowa, and millions of other Americans, we were able to secure victory to continue the positive path that this country was on. Immediately following that, the president asked me to head the Gun Violence Task Force in response to the horrific tragedy at Sandy Hook. And let me tell you something, folks. I worked tirelessly with both the White House and Congress to try to get common sense gun reform passed. And it didn't work. Didn't work. The NRA had a reach that was too far into Congress. Listen, when I was a member of Congress, I consistently had an F rating from them. A rating, by the way, I was happy to earn. But let me tell you something, folks. Times are changing. Too many of our young people are being caught victim to gun violence. These kids in Parkland, Florida, have given me hope that it is the youth of this country that is going to rise up and demand legislation that protects their lives and the lives of many other young Americans, and that's something to applaud. Then the president asked me to help protect our young Americans even more by helping to end sexual assault on college campuses across the country. I've said it before, and I'll say it again today. No means no, period. Something, quite frankly, I think the current president should understand. Folks, I have to tell you, serving as your vice president was one of the great honors of my life. The president and I worked hard to ensure that the lives of every single American improved over our 8 years in the White House. And folks, we hope to continue that legacy in 2016 with another Democratic successor. And this is where it gets serious. No, I mean it. This is one of the greatest regrets of my life. We didn't work hard enough to convey our message of hope and peace and prosperity for all Americans that only Democrats can offer. We dropped the ball. Barack Obama and I built a legacy that we wanted to continue forever, and we didn't do a good enough job explaining to folks that our message was the right message and that Democrats had more to offer. That's why I'm here today. The moment is here, the time is now, right here in Iowa. We have to begin to take our country back. We're taking it back from the top 1%. We're taking it back from special interests. We're taking it back from the white nationalists who parade around pretending to be patriots. Look, we were successful 2 years ago in taking back the House of Representatives. Iowa, you flipped 2 districts. That was a big deal. And now we can issue some real oversight over this administration. But now is the time that we send this administration packing and get back to the business of running the country. You guys have worked tirelessly over the past 4 years to let that guy know how you feel about him. From the Women's March, to protesting the Muslim ban, to the March for Our Lives, to the protesting of putting children in cages. You guys have been on the front lines of protecting democracy. We are a democracy. Democracy from the Greek, demokratia, meaning rule by the people, not rule by the few or rule by the one. This level of enthusiasm for protecting our democracy has given me hope that this country wants to get back to business as usual. Folks, this is the most important election of our lifetime. This election is going to send a solid message to the man in the White House and all of his supporters that the majority of this country wants some goddamn normalcy. I'm not kidding here. We cannot mess around with this. If you want to see protections of your health care and your parents' health care and your children's health care, if you want to see a press and a media that isn't being persecuted on a daily basis, if you want to see a safer world that doesn't involve North Korea and Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon, if you want to show Russia that we are not victims and we are stronger than Vladimir Putin, if you want a future for your children where they go to school every single day, not having to worry about if they will make it home, if you want to see an America where white Americans and black Americans and Asian Americans and Hispanic Americans come together as one American race, united under the principles of freedom, liberty, and equality, then I need your support to be the next President of the United States on November 3rd. We're better than this. We can do this. We are Americans. Let's remember what it's like to be American again. God bless you, Iowa. God bless our troops. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you.